So good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining again, another episode of Behind the Scenes, where I get to be the host, talking to some really interesting people. Today, I'm joined by Shams Khan of SCB Global. At SCB Global, he leads the solutions architects, being one of their principals. Really exciting. Shams, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. What some of the viewers don't know is we actually met on a yacht in the Riviera down in France, which I think some people are going to be annoyed that I just said that, given we're in a pandemic and some people haven't been able to travel. But if we think back to where we were, I think about a year ago, it was beautiful. It was sunny, and we just started to speak there and built a relationship, and here we are today. So thanks for joining. Before we get started and I ask you a few questions, can you tell us a little bit about you, your background, and also SCB Global? Because I just saw some press releases and you're up to some interesting stuff.
Firstly, thanks, Chris, for having me here today. Really excited and good to connect. Wish would have been different had we not been in the pandemic, but we are where we are. And so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shams Khan. I work as a principal solutions consultant for SCB Global. I've been with the business for coming up to close to 8 years. Started off with an interesting journey coming out of university, working as an intern, then moving into the analyst role, then working my way up into pre-sales, and now heading up the consultancy arm of SCB Global.
I love it. So just a quick question, because I know you're going to tell us about SCB Global, but I told you I'll probably interrupt and ask a bunch of questions. But starting through that transition in your career, how has that kind of influenced where you are at SCB Global? Because it's, being able to be an engineer, talk product, and then ultimately help sell with your partners is sometimes challenging. So having that background, I guess, how does that influence you?
It has been an interesting journey, I must say. So starting off in being hands-on, I have a computer and network engineering background. So I've been very much interested in technology, pretty much around computers and the tech. Started off in cloud as my dissertation, to be honest with you, where cloud wasn't even a thing. This is going about almost 10 years ago. And for us, cloud has become a major play, and cloud has been the reason why we are here, virtually connecting as well. So bringing that expertise and that experience of how things work and being that glue, I give the analogy of an hourglass example. So being between the business and the tech to translate what goes on from one end of the spectrum to the other, and be that conduit, be that middle bridge, if you like. It gets me really excited, because you have to turn your tone or your language depending on the audience you speak with. So it's been quite interesting, and it's something that has molded me to move up in the path that where I am with SCB as well, working with various partners, plugging that into our product set and driving the products into a simplicity model, which is what SCB is, one of the ethos or pillars is great. And it's great to see where I was as an individual when I started, fresh from university, graduated, and learning up to, getting the theory that I got into practicality, and then shaping that up, molding myself as an individual, as a professional, and adding value to our customers, partners, and also to SCB has been a great play. And, I'm very thankful for SCB for giving me the opportunity to hone those skills and present those skills as well.
Right. Well, let me just ask you a question before you tell us about SCB. What you said about being able to articulate between sales into, let's say, service delivery and operations, and obviously that sometimes becomes a challenge and a differentiator among service providers. I guess and then tell us about SCB, but how have you been able to influence that at SCB? Because I know you sell through the channel with master agents and things like that. So when you have multiple relationships, how have you kept it simple from a product standpoint as well?
It's a difficult task, but in our view, or at least for me personally, it was quite challenging. Especially coming from a technical background, when you explain, you end up throwing lots of jargons, lots of internal, terminologies. It's about having the mindset, and some people might find it funny. It's like I always think in my head that I'm speaking to somebody who's like an 8-year-old who can understand the information if you put it simply. So if you can remove the complexity, remove the jargon, and bring the analogies that are real, that they can find it tangible, that is the key for both our customers and partners, because every partner has their own player. They're experts in that vertical, but not the other. So bringing that mix and helping them realize what we are about in that simplicity manner is the key, and that's what we are trying to do. And that's one of the things that I personally try and inculcate in my delivery or explanation.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, and you've got to keep it simple. I actually heard, I can't remember where. I think it was at one of the events that they had, and it was like a battle royale type discussion. And they said, describe SD-WAN, and one of the software providers there basically said, if they were speaking to their 5-year-old, they basically said, well, it's kind of like Waze, the app. Trying to find the best way to get to your different path. And they use that terminology or that analogy to actually get there. And I went, well, that's kind of simple, the way to speak about SD-WAN, but, it kind of does fit. Now at SCB, tell me about, SCB itself, but then also kind of where you are with the product set, because, you've kind of been transitioning that product a little bit, very heavy into the cloud. Obviously, now you've got the SD-WAN there, and then would be interested to see kind of what SD-WAN is in terms of your portfolio and how big it will be.
Sure. So SCB, firstly, I'll try and clarify what SCB is, because we do get often mixed with SBCs, which we don't complain about, but that's where we are. It stands for Simple Call Business. We started as a product under a large parentship, a wholesale, tier 1, tier 2 carrier around providing IP-based connectivity back in 2004. So when the ISDN was more like dominant and IP was in its infancy, so old to the new transition where we came, and we started delivering and providing that interconnect IP-based wholesale connectivity and voice traffic to different parts around the world. And SCB at the time was Simple Call Business for enterprise vertical, and as industry took its turn, so did SCB. Became a platform to power various PBX platforms with our PSG in transit, carrier grade service in different parts around the world. So you get that single supplier experience, single hand to shake experience. And as industry started to evolve further, going more towards the cloud, we took the turn as well, and we rebranded to become SCB Global to resonate what we do, a global player, global play, powering various UCaaS, CCaaS applications and platforms with our expertise and footprint, and also segueing into the cloud play of providing UCaaS, CCaaS solutions. And we had a special relationship, an interest in the large brands like Cisco, Microsoft especially, and we moved ahead with that to provide solutions for customers and partners within that play. And that's where Microsoft Teams, which is everyone's talking about, SCB has been doing that since Microsoft was born, as in Microsoft Teams was born from its inception days. That is 2018, early 2019. So we've evolved with that. We have brought flavors of Opto family that refers to optimization or business transformation. Some people even talk about, transformers, how we can transform technology and supercharge the applications and platforms. So that was the mindset for SCB, to bring those expertise from the carrier world, having that expertise of the complex compliance that comes with it in various geographies, and providing that single pane of glass experience to our customers and partners. And that was a driver for us to even look at SD-WAN because SD-WAN play, again, a big buzzword that it's there. A lot of people talk about it. A lot of people try and sell it in different ways, looking at the various features. For SCB, we were talking merely, again, around optimization. So that's our play, and that's where we want to be. Again, applications. There are so many applications that exist on our internet pipe, and to make sure that business critical communication, such as what we're having right now, and even telephony, how we can optimize that play, how we can provide the security, how we can ensure that guarantee of performance that can be delivered, how we can have that visibility on various metrics that businesses require, so they can understand what's going on and where they need to improve. SCB brings that play with that modern version, if you like, of a carrier provider with all the bells and whistles, with that single handshake experience globally. So that's where we come in. There's a lot we do within that space, but as a high level, from where we come from, what we are today has been driven by simplifying business communication, driving that integration, promoting that consolidation that businesses require today.
Well, I like it's funny. I was just thinking as well as you're speaking, there's so many acronyms that get thrown out. And you brought me back to when I started my career in telecommunications, and I got a report about this big. And I would say a third of it was an appendix that just had what those acronyms actually meant, everything from interconnects to, what you're calling the PBXs and everything else. But what really struck me about what you were saying is that, the life cycle of the company and where you started from, the IP based, and then you got prem solutions and cloud, and now you're mixing them together, and you've got the SD-WAN stepping into the network, and no doubt that'll probably step into more of the security play. As you're solution architecting with your salespeople and the customers and engineers and so forth, being able to have that type of vantage point is extremely differentiating, because what people may not know from what SCB delivers, they don't have to take all of that stuff. So you may be in a discovery call with a customer, and you may walk away with Teams, but being able to understand all the different components of the network, from telephony to cloud to networking, that brings a lot of value, and probably leads to a longer term kind of growth play with those customers. So I always find it very interesting when service providers have a lot of other capabilities, but also how they've transitioned their business on the front line. So we talked a little bit about how you've been a subject matter expert. Obviously, for folks listening, no one's going to doubt that you are a subject matter expert. Another question that I wanted to ask is, culture is a big play. I've been asking a lot of people that I speak to, we're in a pandemic, we're in hosted solutions, we're remote, we're mobile. How's SCB and you with your team maintaining culture while you're working under these type of circumstances?
Great question, because it's very difficult to replace in-person human touch and human interaction and maintain that in the virtual world. Whilst many might think, oh yeah, it's great for SCB and providers like SCB to sell lots of remote working solutions and provide that home-based UCaaS, CCaaS solutions on Teams, for instance. But there is that aspect that you need to have the hybrid component. So what at SCB we've done initially, we were at the peak of the pandemic. Yes, we were very easy. We were blessed to have what we sell as a technology to use, but we started to have a virtual weekly sessions. Just an open meeting session where anybody can come. We can talk about things. It was like a social gathering, if you like, and that we did weekly for an hour or so, and that kind of helped to have, and video naturally helps, and we started to do that. As things have started to relax, and now we're in a different situation, but when they did relax, we started to bring about having that interaction. So if anybody wants to go into the office once or twice to meet your colleagues and peers, then we did that as well, and we are doing that. And again, that's a discretion on again, government guidelines, as well as ensuring that if the
Right.
person feels that they want to go. But that's what we did. To maintain that company culture, team, have that effect, is we did have some other socials that we did, but again, it's very restrictive. So we try to do what we can to not eliminate that human touch, if you like, from SCB as a group, as a group of people. Although we have international employees as well, they naturally can't come, but we have had them connected in various forms virtually, in whatever we are doing. So that's been SCB's way of dealing with it and maintaining that culture.
Yeah, it's challenging, but it's definitely a really great approach, the way that you guys are thinking about it and being able to maintain culture, because in this market and with people and just dealing with the social, economic, and health, obviously, it's really a focus there. And it is interesting, though, we're talking about mobility like it just happened, right? But I think back, and one of the big things in my career, and I was on the telecommunications, we had a hurricane that happened in the States, and I know you're not located in the States here, but that was something that stayed with me, because that's when really that UCaaS push was starting to happen, and trying to get mobility and being able to work where you want, when you want, and how you want. That was a big play. And now it just seems like we're having that same discussion again. There's been an uptick, right, on the UCaaS play, or the UCaaS side of the market. And then SD-WAN is really, how do we have a home solution? So talk to me a little bit about how you're approaching the market, not just with teams, but as businesses are now transitioning more into that remote play, how are you leveraging SD-WAN?
Yeah, so in terms of us as SCB, we talked about providing Microsoft Teams solutions with our Opto for Teams platform, Opto for Contact Center platform. But what we realized is there is a disparate workforce, and it's naturally going to increase wherever it goes. We have carrier grade solutions and security, etc., on our side on the core network, but when businesses have started to go into territories and venturing out in the home environment, we realized that there is a potential gap that we can address, and that's where SD-WAN play comes in. So we can optimize the Teams experience for business users who might be working from home or work from anywhere, doesn't really matter. In addition to that, provide them that assurance for the service from security, from next-gen firewalls and UTM. That again, we're going into acronyms, but that's where we come in to break those acronyms down and provide them simplicity and assurance, so they can get a true business-grade experience that they would have expected in their corporate network whilst working from home. That's where we're seeing we can provide that application performance, optimal experience, and optimize that overlay of the application for their business critical communication traffic versus having Netflix or PS4 or not PS5 draining the pipe. Fortnite. So that's where we come in to say, how can we ensure businesses can still be operational and have that efficiency that the application can provide, and bridge that gap. And that's where the SCB optimization flavor comes in, not just connecting people, or connecting people to application, but also optimizing those experiences.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've already gotten past being able to communicate where you want, when you want, how you want. Now it's about how do you ensure both quality and performance, but also security and having that secure capability. So, it's interesting seeing where, I'll just speak selfishly, being from the telecommunications, seeing it, and now being on the networking side with SD-WAN, and seeing it all come together is really quite phenomenal and interesting. And I love seeing service providers such as yourself being able to take it to market really effectively. Couple more questions. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I told you beforehand, I like that inside the actor studio type questions. I'm always interested in what my guest will say. But from a professional stance, what keeps you up at night?
I mean, from professional stance, for me, it's like, again, driving that, keeping yourself in at the level of the rate of change that is happening with technology and everything else, and there's so much play that is taking place. Keeping yourself at pace with it, and that's where I feel sometimes you need to have that break, and you realize what you're doing,
right.
and that's where I think you have to have that kind of balance in your life to ensure that you get that work-life balance, and that's
Sure.
the thing which drives me more thinking about it.
Right. It's even I'd say more difficult now because work life is
Yes.
it seems like there is no balance, because where does the day start and where does it end? And I would just say it's probably also your fault, because the technologies that you've implemented ensure that people are always able to access that type of business application. So you're exactly right, and being able to ensure those type of balances are really important. So that makes sense. One more question that I have is, a lot of times it's about being the brand ambassador and making sure that the company is perceived the appropriate way, and you're continuing to have the right culture, and the products are adapting and customers are being responded to and supported appropriately, and the relationships are really successful. But I'm always curious, if you heard the market speaking about SCB, what would you like them to say about you?
Yeah, difficult question. Trying to big SCB up. I think if we were to highlight, if we wanted the market to talk about SCB, and this is again taking from our customers, is having that consultative approach that we carry in, whether we call it crawl, walk, or run, to deliver their business needs and helping them strategize when it comes to their global solutions. For the business critical communication. That's another element that comes out or shines really well for SCB, and providing that single handshake, single pane of glass experience for their communications is of paramount essence, with security
Right.
and compliance forming at the forefront. That's where I think we would like to hear about that, and how we take that complex web that exists in the jargon out and deliver that simplicity in communications is what I think we are delivering. And if we can get that echoed from the industry and from our customers or partners, or even the industry, I think we're doing a really good job, and that's where we want to be. And that's what strives us every day, to find different ways of communicating our message and our pedigree.
So basically, you want to make sure that the market knows that you are going to take the complex out of the complexity of technology. You're going to make it simple, and you're going to deliver on exactly what you say you're going to do with very unique products. And you guys have the intelligence behind it, because just from our discussion, and I always say this whenever we speak, you're the best of having a discussion saying, hey, I don't know so much about this. Will you explain? And then it turns out you actually know more than the person that you're asking. So you always got to be careful of that. But look, I really appreciate it. I think that you guys are up to a lot of really interesting things out there. I've really enjoyed our relationship and the partnership here, and what you're really executing in the market. Thank you for taking time speaking with us. Again, this is Chris Chirico, VergX COO. This is another episode of Behind the Scenes, and this is Shams Khan of SCB Global.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and thanks, Chris, for having me here.
My pleasure. Anytime. Take care.